right, good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm Supervisor Tony LaFountain. I have Town Board members Linda Cole and Rob Quinn, who has joined me this morning. The discussion I wanted to have this morning is as it relates to shadow pines, and specifically as it relates to discussion around public referendum versus permissive referendum. So the media has received copies of a timeline. That timeline is approximately 2 years in running. I will not go through that entire timeline. And additionally, this is posted on the working page or project page of Shadows on our website, and members of the Moratorium Committee have also received copies of that as well. So there's been, a lot of misinformation out as it relates to public referendum versus a permissive referendum. And I, on several occasions, have indicated that our desire was to have a public referendum vote, up or down vote by our residents. What has happened is that as part of our negotiations with the seller, we've been put in a position that we could not do a public referendum and still meet their requirements for a closing date. So our town board decided, as we took a look at all of our options, that in order to make this work, and there was a lot of interest not only by our moratorium committee, that was their top recommendation, but also members of this community to purchase the Shadow Pines property. So the board took a look at 3 different options. Option 1, once we met the requirements for the environmental review, and by law we had to do that before we could go out for a referendum. One of the things the board took a look at is that with a closing date, a hard closing date of January 31st, and no flexibility to change that, the board made a decision, instead of going to a public referendum, which would take us out into the March timeframe, the board elected to take a look at a permissive referendum. So the permissive referendum can take, 2 different directions. If we do not receive a petition that asks for a public vote, on a expedited timeline, we could close by February 6th. If we receive a petition and that forces us to go out for a public vote, that will take us until about the April timeframe. And again, as I indicated, if right after we completed our environmental review, if we went out, that would be March. As you can see, all 3 of those dates, all 3 of those options take us past that January 31st hard date. So the town still continues to negotiate in good faith with the seller as it relates to the February 6th timeline. Again, if a petition comes in with the signatures, enough signatures to actually call for a public referendum, that will take us well past the timeline. And if we were to, as soon as we got our environmental review, went out for a public referendum, again, that would take well past. So the board made a hard decision to keep this going and to keep moving forward to pass the bond resolutions and to look to work to our expedited schedule of February 6th. And again, there is, at this point, we have not received anything from the seller to say that they're willing to even go to that February 6th date. So I know there's a lot of confusion out there. There is a lot of misinformation. Social media in its form takes a lot of things and shares that wide and far. However, we wanted to make sure that we gave the accurate facts as it relates to this. Town Board will be holding a meeting tonight. We will be showing this timeline in a little bit condensed form at 7 o'clock. And there's an opportunity for residents to come and address the board at 2 different occasions during that meeting on this particular subject. So with that, I would be more than happy to take questions from media only. Residents will have an opportunity tonight at the town board. So from our media only.
I say baloney.
Huh?
We're running this.
Why can't we talk? Tony, why can't we talk?
You had 2 years.
We're residents.
And you could have done a referendum during the 2-year period?
I'm trying to.
So any questions from the media?
This is almost.
What?
Get ready for it.
Tony, how frustrating has this process been for the town?
I think the process has been frustrating for everyone. Certainly the town board. I'm sure the seller is frustrated. A number of the residents are frustrated on a number of fronts. If they're interested in supporting the purchase of the length of time that it's taken. For those that are not interested in this, again, not having the opportunity for an up or down vote. So there's frustration across all fronts.
And what would you like to see happen at the end of all this?
Well, again, the town board has made the determination to move forward and negotiate in good faith with the seller. And right now,
$3 million in Penfield with this many residents should require a vote.
Yeah, not
You shouldn't just go with a bunch of people on the board.
You want to vote. Let the man answer the question.
Hey, I have my opportunity to speak. You can say your 2 bits too. Say it, I don't care. This is baloney.
so again, any other questions?
When you hear this, obviously some residents are not happy about it. You said you also did want a public vote and you listed out some of the issues. I mean, is there still a way? I mean,
Certainly the way that could in fact happen is that if a petition is submitted that then requires the town to go to a vote, the town in good faith will go back to the seller and explain that we did receive the petition. It is calling for a public vote. We would ask for them to extend their closing. Again, their hard closing date is January 31st. We would ask them to extend that several months to get us to that process of going to a public vote. And their options obviously are to say, we're willing to work with you, or no, the deal is done. And then they would move into their next stages, whatever that might be, I'm guessing, to sell to others.
just kind of the back and forth, just your feelings about that, the frustration that's going on.
So it gets back to the earlier question about, frustration. Absolutely. We were put in a position, through these negotiations that didn't allow us a lot of options. In a letter that came to the town on September 20th, it was very specific to say that you needed to close by January 31st. We went back several times and asked to have that changed or modified, and we're told we're not going to do that. Close by the 31st, or we're going to move on. So that's what got the board having the conversations about is there an opportunity for us to continue with this? And again, the resolution passed to do a public or a permissive referendum, subject to permissive referendum. And again, the process is if there is a number of signatures that are turned in, that number is 5% of the last gubernatorial election. It's around just shy of 700 signatures. If that comes in, the town board has to honor that. The town board then would go back to the seller and indicate, we've got this, we would like to extend the closing date or possible closing date past January 31st, and they can say, yes, we're willing to work with you, or no, we're not. And if they're not willing to extend that, then it becomes, essentially a dead deal.
What is our slogan? Penfield, the town of planning progress.
I gotta agree.
Huh?
Yeah.
This is nothing. You had 2 years
That's right.
for a referendum. Why didn't you do it earlier? Answer that question.
I hope you're gonna talk to some people other than this loudmouth.
Yeah.
2 years.
Mr. I would,
Other opinions in the room.
I would just,
I can shout too.
Go
I-
ahead, show.
No, I'm trying to be respectful of the town board.
How about
This is a
this?
press conference.
How about
You
taking
can
the
talk
front
tonight.
nine to build
Come
buildings
to
and
the
do
town
the
meeting
back
and talk
nine
tonight, loudmouth.
far apart?
so,
I can
Maybe you
shout
shouldn't
just as
have sat
loud
in
as
the
you
background there,
can. I
Junior.
can shout just as loud as you can if we're gonna destroy this press conference.
Well, it's obvious there's a problem, so there'll be a petition done.
Good,
Yeah.
get your petition.
It's almost done.
Go ahead,
It's
loudmouth.
only, we've been working on it for a few days.
I will, I'll be more than happy for any individual discussions. So, thank you for everyone that came. Thank you.